Welcome to Being Curious podcast show with Counselling Reflections, a podcast where we dive deep into the human experience, uncovering stories of resilience and triumph. We are proudly supported by Moskin, a UK-based skincare line infused with sea moss.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening once again to Being Curious with Counselling Reflections. Or Being Curious with Counselling Reflections. I don't even know my own name. I am with Denicea, and she's our guest today. So, Denicea, please let us know where you are in the world. Who are you? What do you do? What do you want to talk about as well? And we could just take it from there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. It's Cornetta. Thank you so much for having me and with you and joining you. You say evening, I'm in afternoon because I'm in Florida in the US. I actually have my business as a holistic well-being consultant and doctor of Eastern medicine. The way that I work the medicine is I love working with women who consider themselves introverts and empaths, and where it is that they would love to just experience these ooey gooey rich relationships with people, but they want to do it where they can feel like they can be themselves. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult for them to do it. And how do they navigate these relationships? Who are they really authentically? And I actually love showing them how they can use signals coming from their whole body as a way to guide them in that and how they can cultivate those rich relationships with others and themselves first.
It sounds amazing, Denicea. And there's so many questions that I would like to kind of ask you. I suppose the first question would be, how did you get to do the work that you're currently doing? What led you on this path? Why this work?
So if I were to really, really think about it, I've been interested in medicine since I was young, maybe like 5, maybe a little bit older than that. But I've just always been interested in medicine. Well, actually, take that back. My first thing was I wanted to be a marine biologist, actually. I know. I had such a connection with marine life and specifically dolphins and whales. And so I had this whole vision. I just saw myself going out there on boats just to listen to their sounds and being able to identify pods by their dorsal fins and flukes. That's actually what I wanted to do.
Same thing to kind of think about. What was it? Is it because you saw, I suppose, are you by the sea then where you are? Or was it about marine life?
So I'm in the Tampa Bay area in Florida, which is on the west coast of Florida. So I'm on the Gulf. And so it's not oceanside. So I'm not sure. I just remember studying and looking at all the different types of dolphins, all the different types of whales. And I just had this connection to them. And I'd, be that person that's that's a dolphin, not a porpoise, or that's a porpoise, not a dolphin, and I just was fascinated by it. And the interesting thing is I don't know how to swim. So maybe that played a factor until I didn't go that route. But I just did. I still feel called to them.
It's very connected to the sea.
Yeah. And I will say my sun sign is Cancer. So yes. I think that wateriness is there. And I mean, where I'm on the Gulf side of the state, we do get dolphins actually that will come up through the bay and on the Gulf side. So there have been times where I would be out. There's a couple times I'm thinking about, there was a cafe that was right on the intercoastal, and then I was just working that day, and then sure enough, you just see the pod of them coming. And when we got married, when we got married, we got married in a city that's on the Gulf also. And so we were like, yeah, we're going to go hang out at the beach before we like make the drive back home. And so we're out there on the beach, and I remember like being out in the water and everything. And then my husband and his brothers were there, daughter was there, and then my niece was there, and yeah, so we were all out in the water, and then all of a sudden I just see this look on their faces, and I just see his brothers take off running back towards the shore, and I'm like, what is happening? And my husband like totally left me, and me and his daughter, and we're like, I'm like, what is going on? And I saw it, and it was a dorsal fin just casually swimming by, but it was somewhat close to us. And then I was like, you guys, it's a dolphin. Like, and it was just, and my husband's response was, man, where there's dolphin, there's something that's going to try to eat it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, just chill, relax. But yeah, I just have always had that connection with them. I love like just seeing them swim, and they're just so majestic to me. Yeah, so that's like on my list, is to go swim with the dolphins, like somewhere.
That sounds like amazing. And I'm my family from a Caribbean island, and the one thing that I absolutely adore is just being by the sea, whether it's here in the UK in terms of the coastland, or being anywhere in the world that I've traveled, kind of being by nature. I can just see that as, something that's really deeply connecting, quite peaceful as well. How did you decide to get to, I suppose, Eastern medicine? It's interesting in medicine in itself. How did that kind of get there?
So, like, okay, yeah, past the marine biology thing, so we were in and out of the hospital a lot growing up with my sister. She experiences asthma. And so we were just kind of in and out of the emergency room just with asthma attacks and stuff like that. And so I was really curious. We're meeting doctors and nurses and stuff. And so then I was like, there has to be a better way like to do this. And so kind of planted a seed in my head. Like, I am quite interested. I was very curious. I remember I would ask the doctors questions and stuff like that. So then like fast forward, now I'm like in college. Like I said, when I was going to college, I'm going to do pre-med, like we're going to go blah, blah, blah. I had a very not so great appointment with my college advisor one day. And I just remember after that meeting, I just said, I'm not going to do it anymore. And so then I went another route. And so I changed majors and studied event management and started doing event management, fundraising. And then what happened was one day we were doing a tour because I was working at a university. So we were doing a tour with a partner company, like university. And we were in the cadaver lab because I was on the health side. And I just remember looking at this body and feeling like I was just flooded with information about this person that was in front of me, and like just information coming to me, and I'm just spouting off all this info, and someone was at the foot of the bed and reading their bio card and basically was confirming what I was feeling and what I thought.
And you were being flooded and connected to this person that's lying there.
Yeah. And it was like, I just remember sweating and feeling so hot. But it was like, it was excitement. And then that day was when I said, I have to go back into medicine. Like, there's a way that I'm reading the body and I'm seeing the body. Like, it's time, right? And so then what happened was I went back to where my college was. And I was just visiting one of my sorority sisters, and I'm telling her this plan. Like, I'm telling her, hey, I'm going to go back and do finish up my prereqs and all that stuff and apply. And she says, well, if there's another way that you can treat patients, would you be interested? And I asked her, I said, what do you mean there's another way? And so then she's the one who actually introduced it, like saying, well, there's acupuncture, like you can do that. And but there's more to acupuncture, and there's all these other stuff. And I was just like, what, really? And so she was already enrolled in this school. And so after that, I went and researched and fell in love with the whole concept of seeing people as a whole being. I fell in love with all we need to do is give them the tools for their body to start the flow and to start the functioning, like to recalibrate itself to be able to do what it needs to do its job. And I fell in love with, wow, like it's really taking a look at what's going on in their life, like what has happened in their life, what is happening now.
It's quite a holistic approach to
It is.
someone. And I can imagine that must have been, I don't know what the timing of the time that you kind of started your journey again, but was that counterintuitive to modern American ideas of medicine and actually healing or fixing someone?
Yeah, so there were definitely it's like sometimes I don't want to say contradictions as much as it is I believe them on spectrum.
Okay.
And so like at that time there was heavy emphasis, on specialization. There weren't as many primary care physicians that were coming out, like generalists and things like that. And so everyone was operating in their silos. And I mean, to be honest, like that was one of the reasons why for myself, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go in and I'm going to study neonatology. Like that was going to be my specialty. Like there wasn't a generalist type of thing. And so to come even then into Eastern medicine, I'm going to tell you that even though it is Eastern medicine, there's actually quite a lot of similarities. And so people will specialize even in Eastern medicine in a certain like system. And so you'll see these mirrors between the two. And so it was interesting because it's like I see the similarities and I see the differences. And so I actually like embracing both sides. So where I am this doctor of Eastern medicine, I incorporate what would be called functional medicine sometimes. So, are there some labs that I might suggest, or do they have those? And because to me, I look at it as these are different ways to look at people. So I envision like, here's a different set of glasses. Like, ooh, what do these glasses look like? This one's going to give me this perspective. And then I might take those off and then I'll be like, oh, these will give me that perspective of that person. And so, and I'll tell you that even in the current climate, what has happened is there are a lot of people that are here that see that there has been so much specialization that they feel separated. Okay. Whereas when I say holistic, and I said it in the beginning, like I said it, right? Like it's seeing the whole person. And so what happens is like, now there's like, people are feeling like they just want to be with somebody who can connect the dots with them, that can like be almost like a central hub in a way. And so there has been a transition of people wanting that. And so then now you have primary care starting to like come up and be more appreciated. They're starting to, even in hospitals, they're having the people that are supposed to be the central person and like to try to connect like, okay, well, cardiology says this, endocrinology says that, that kind of thing. And so that was happening, but I think that it's just that it's happening more. And so,
yeah, it's so interesting because I'm thinking even for me as a therapist, there was a great emphasis in therapy to be in your silos, in your one area, your CBT or your trauma specialist or your analytical psychodynamic. Whereas I think, increasingly, although the NHS might operate in a very specific way of looking at mental health, clients I see in private practice want a more holistic approach. And so I'm finding myself as a therapist not to be the expert in the medical stuff, because that's the doctor's point, but talking about sleep, in a way talking about food, in a way talking about exercise as part of a holistic approach to looking at mental health in a way. And I can see that it's interesting that from what you're saying, there's a shift towards looking at things in a much more holistic way. It's not either or,
Right.
in some ways.
Yeah, and that's the like it. So there's a camp, and it's called it's an area of study called psychoneuroimmunology, and so for them they would study the mental and emotional influence and how the physical body would change. And so to be able to see like cells actually change by what it is that someone's feeling and what they're thinking, the gut microbiome makeup would change by the way that someone's thinking or feeling, right? And then at the same time, it's like, so one of my areas of specialty, like I said, like it was happening even in Eastern medicine, was in reproductive health. So like in menstrual health and fertility. And so I'm naturally going to be looking at the key hormones that play a role there. But even then, it's you'll see that when estrogen is predominating, there's certain ways that you think, right? When progesterone is predominating, there's certain ways that you might think. When testosterone is predominating, right? So, and why that's important to see is because this is where I would tell people, and I just say, hey, just be aware, right? Start to get to know your body, like reframe your relationship with your body. And that can actually be challenging for many people because for so many, there has actually been a disrespect to the body in some way, shape, or form. In a way to cope with that, they dissociated. And in the process of dissociation, it leaves almost like a gap. Like this is how I see it visually, is like it leaves this gap. But we inherently want to be whole. And so we might start looking for things to fill that gap without realizing we can fill the gap from within. So what'll happen is they'll start to try to fill this gap with all these other things and other people, right? And they lose sight of what the messages are coming from the body. So even when they're looking at their hormones or during a cycle, right? Like during a menstrual cycle, where it is that even culturally or societally, it's like you're admonished, right, for the way that you might see things or the way you might say things. And then especially, you'll hear the colloquialisms, oh, it's PMS, like, and it's just dismissed, or they're apologizing for being a little bit more assertive, right? And when it is that you begin to foster the different type of the relationship with the body where you understand what's going on in this way, then that's where you can see it's actually not necessarily anything to apologize for. It's that
Just the way
during this time, you're going to have when estrogen's really peaking, it's like that's your body's way also of especially during ovulation. It's naturally trying to attract to mate. Right? Like it's so cool. I wish I could remember this documentary. Oh my goodness. But it was this really, really cool documentary that even, they had their sample size come in and they had them walk. Like, so they had these women walk. And then what happened was they had them walk and then mark like where they were in their menstrual cycle. And the sway in the walk even got wider. As they got closer to ovulation, there were certain certain ways that literally you move, that would be so subtle, yet it was a way for you to attract, right?
Yeah.
With that, though,
yeah,
yes, but with that came you, in a way, when you see like a potential mate, you might be okay with certain things that normally you'd be like, I don't want that, because you're trying, because you're like wanting to mate. But then when you come out of that, and so now you're in this ideal phase.
That's it. There's some research that says that often women might have one night stands and they might be tipsy, and it's almost that the body picks the person that they need to sleep with. And usually the person that they pick is nowhere near the person that they want to date. he's arrogant. He's like not on your life in the normal cycle time. Would I want to be with that person? But from the body's point of view, actually, he's the right person to have my child. And so then, therefore, you find women then having these children with men that they don't really want to have. But for the child, it actually kind of helps the survival of that child to kind of come through. We're looking at that kind of biological. It really does make sense. Then there's something that you're also saying that I noticed in practice. It takes up to about 8 years here in the UK for women to address gynecological issues. So it's not that women don't know that there's something wrong, but we don't have the conversation. So from when our periods start, and in terms of like black young girls start earlier than white young girls, we're told to put up with the pain, and actually, or put up with the heaviness of the period. And we don't know, many women don't know what they should put up with. And so it takes that long period of time before then they go to a gynecologist who might then be a male and not be kind of in tune with what the woman is trying to say, or you don't do anything, and then, later on, larger things happen to the body, I suppose.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I would tell. This is very similar here. And that was something that I used to campaign about, which was like, what you consider to be normal may not necessarily be healthy. And I will say too, like, there are also women gynecologists that also miss things. Like, they miss it or they don't even know themselves, right? So like, I say that because I started seeing a pendulum swing and then being like, well, you're not a woman, so you don't even understand. Like, that's what it, and the thing is that it's kind of like, I think it's just person. Like, just go in and be like, this is a person, right? And either way that they look, whatever packaging that they come in, they might have been exposed to like whatever it is that they learned in their schooling, right? Whatever it is that they had experience with for them personally. And so it's one of those, like, just kind of going with that lens. But, and then also, it's what you're told, what you're taught. Like, a lot of here in schools, it wasn't really, by the time you were in biology, and by the time as you're going through the curriculum, you get to the reproductive system is one of the last systems that's discussed. And then it's also like very quick. And most of the time it would just be what they taught us was, oh, they'll have menarche. And then that's when their menstrual cycles would start. And then that's when they get pregnant. And then society's like, well, you've become a woman now. But no one actually you weren't taught like, oh, a menstrual cycle is like from these cycle days to this cycle day. You're not taught like, what you're looking for. We were just told, mark on a calendar when it started, and then that way you would know when it should start next month, and that's it. But there was no discussion about what would happen in between. If you wanted more detail like that, then you were more than likely going to be going into med school, and then that's when you started learning a little bit more, right? And I mean, there's historical things as well, right? So there's historical, at least here, like a disproportionate distribution of even hormonal birth control to certain groups, and to Black women, right? And it was as a method, and just as much as it was like for abortions, and they did hysterectomies without knowledge. They did. So it's just so much that's in there that it's kind of like we have to acknowledge too the distrust of the system, distrust of the medical industry, and so it's like on both sides, the patient side and the provider side, there's like
it's almost like miseducation, isn't there? There is almost like here within the UK. There's a disproportionate amount of Black women who have miscarriages or stillbirths within the system, who might die at childbirth, and trying to kind of relate and understand why that happens. I think from your point of view, you're saying actually there's so much you've got to learn, but for some reason, gynecological or women's issues are kind of tacked on at the end and kind of rushed quickly. But when you then look at probably old ways of doing things in the Caribbean, I just remember, my grandparents, or even if I go back to the Caribbean, there's a bush for everything.
I knew you were going to go there.
Help myself. There's a bush. And, my daughter went to Grenada and came back with raspberry bush tea and some other bush. And I said, well, what's this thing? She said, oh, it's good for the womb. And, and so even she's kind of translated. For you in your work and in your practice, how did you kind of understand what you needed to learn in terms of biological stuff, but also take into your own spiritual connection and a holistic approach to what needed to be done? Does that make sense? Is that too many questions, I think?
Like, how did I get to... Well, they kind of happen... I feel like... So there are certain parts of my spiritual journey that happened before going to school for this, right? And then as I'm in school, first of all, I went to school and was like, I'm going to do sports medicine, do sports medicine and pediatrics and neurology. Like, those are my things. It wasn't until I was in school and I was in class, and then we're in our section on reproductive health, and then I'm like, wait a second, right? Telling me all this stuff that they're just like, yeah, it'll pass. You're telling me Chinese medicine has been known that these are signs of pathology, and so then that is when it started for me. And then even while I was in school, the spiritual part of me really started opening up even more, and then it's just kind of grown and evolved since then. And I feel like, and it ties, I feel like it ties into my purpose as well, like to just kind of keep this pulse of like what's going on. I ask those questions about when there are these disparities. When these disparities are reported, then that's when I do kind of start questioning certain things. It's like, where are they? What are the population sizes? Who's reporting this? Why are they reporting it? And the reason why I do this is because I feel like historically, in so many places, clearly, because you're describing it right now, fear is a wonderful, wonderful emotion to use to manipulate and control people. And so a lot of what I started seeing was that there was a lot of fear-based choice making that would happen. And so there would be like, because I was also a labor doula as well. So like, even with the fertility side, you'd hear all of these things being told to these women, like, yeah, you're not going to do this. There's a lot of Black women that die in childbirth. There's a lot of Black women that die after, blah, blah, blah. Right. So then what happened was like, they're going in fight or flight, freeze or fawn. They are on alert. And so then you wonder then why it is that possibly during birthing, there might be delays in labor. Right. And then that starts a whole cascade of events. But it's like, does anybody even address that what fears it is that she is experiencing and who planted those seeds of fear and what happens on a biochemical level? So if you need the parasympathetic nervous system to be operating that side of reproductive health, but then they are in the sympathetic predominantly you're burning through minerals. You're burning through vitamins. And so then when you say that this is what's happening disproportionately, who is looking out for those levels? Who's looking out for that when you do need those minerals for contractions? It's muscular contraction that is dominated by minerals. And so what happens? Who's monitoring that? And so then you start to question, okay, is that even being monitored? Are there labs that are being done that you know of? And I'm not talking about just serum. There's also tissue, which is two different stories when you pull it. But then also access to food. So do they actually really have access to the nutrient-dense foods? Do they even know what they are and all of that? And so then when I hear you talk about your daughter going to Grenada and then coming back with this, it's also seeing that I feel like, especially for a lot of ethnic groups, and since we've been talking about Black women, well, even still with Black women, that like our signs of what's healthy, we have to realize that it's been colored by these stipulations and standards for white men. And so you think that you're not, you get what I'm starting to see where I'm going. And so then a lot of the things is like, that's for white men, that's their standard, but ours is different. And it's okay to actually be different. We need to understand what is it that you need. And that doesn't mean that it's going to fit into this box that was shown or said, right? And I also feel like that's a reason why we respond, like the herbs. Yes, there was a plant for that. There still are plants for that. We're about to see a big shift into those coming into herbs. It's already been happening, but they're wanting to go more and more into herbs. And so you're seeing a lot of the herbalists starting to like come out with more and more information about like, what do things look like? How would you use them?
It's really interesting when I'm listening to you, because it's really interesting, because I think that's right. I think even in all our practice, the standard of what was the best practice has been from if you were a white male practitioner. And in terms of when you think about publications, there hasn't been, or there's been a minimize of other voices from across the world. Whether you're Black, whether you're from other parts, eastern parts of the world, you don't necessarily hear the expertise and advice, or you hear it in a way that's quite specialized. And it's really interesting because, you know, when I listen to people from other parts of the world, they are in tune with their body. You know, Spain has allowed women 3 days off at any point during their cycle to take off. People, there are countries in the world that are aware of there is a need to be, or there's a bush or herb that you can use that is not invasive and that doesn't mean to cut you, and that we can done something else. And it's almost like there's a rebirth happening across the world. There's a, you know, the whispering has got louder.
Oh, it's very loud. And like, well, and I don't know if it's louder. Like, I think it's very, very loud because I'm in the space already. And so like, but I'm just seeing more coming into it. And, yeah, it's very beautiful to see. And at the same time, I just feel like there is a responsibility with that. And, because and we've seen little glimpses of it happening, you know, when there's like some declared superfood, right? What happens with that? All of a sudden, everybody thinks that they need to have avocado every day. What does that mean? That means then we're asking these farms to produce avocado for these people for every day, calling it a superfood, which means it's now going to be pushed to be produced when actually not even in season, when it would be easily grown. What happens is it's an overeating. It's an overuse. And then now you have, well, we're gonna just, change the seeds up. Let's like genetically modify it because then demand is there. So I say I say this because then what happens is now the land and then these farms feel this pressure to produce.
There's a lack of diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a disrespect to the environment, because with this, like when people start, and this is why I say there's so many more similarities than people realize, like 1 minute it's this drug, like pharmaceutical drug that'd be so wonderful for blood pressure. And then the demand goes up, and then it starts, like they start prescribing it in the so-called healthy side. Oh, celery is really great for blood pressure. Oh, do this with beets, right? For blood pressure. Guess what happens? People start overdoing it. And then they'll do it with supplements because that's supposed to be for blood pressure. So you see, it's the same thing. Blood pressure is being addressed by all these different ways. The thing is that what's not taught is by moderation. So even when it comes to food, when it comes to teas and herbs, because that's what I would see as well. Like, and we started seeing it, and they're seeing it more and more. People coming into emergency rooms with stones, like kidney stones or gallbladder stones, right? Like, because they would have overdone it with some supplement that actually threw off the mineral harmonization and the functioning, and then therefore calcification into the soft tissues happened. And so people think like, oh, it's an herb, it's completely safe. It's like, well, and then I'm like, if you go to my Materia Medica, it would tell us, even it tells us, like, this is its use, here is its indications, and here are contraindications, and here's like the dosage that you'd want to use, because it was always in moderation.
Yeah. I think you don't know that. I know when I would go to the Caribbean, I think the elders knew that. I think the locals knew what to kind of use. But if you brought back that kind of medicine, what do I know how much things to do? And then sometimes I remember going to a conference years ago where they were talking about children coming into care and really understanding the value systems of Black and African children that come into care. And this idea of giving bush and dosaging came up then, because actually we give things to children and we give them at the same level as we would give to an adult, and we wouldn't necessarily know why.
Yeah. And this is what I mean when I say that there's like a responsibility there. And this is also what I mean when I say that, like, even if it's pharmaceutical, even if it's herbal, even if it's like it's herbal medicine. And so those that would really practice it in these tribes, your elders and whatnot, the shamans, like these people had a relationship with the land. They had a relationship with the earth. So they even knew and practiced in moderation. But what we see is, because of the commercialization and the profit opportunity, it's like, oh, you're going to take this. And I mean, it's said even here a lot, like, you're going to be taking this every day. And it's like, like why every day, right? And so, like, people will overdo it. They will really overdo it. They would not know how to cycle on and off, or they would take. And this is the other thing. This is why also I review with the women, is especially when I hear them talking about creating habits. When you create a habit, it's like you're taking the purpose and meaning out of whatever it is that you're doing, because you're trying to routinize it. You're making a routine because you don't want to think about it. And that's even how it's taught in these productivity camps, is you just want to get in there so you don't even have to think about it. You can habit stack it and then whatever. But why? That's another form, in my eyes, it's another form of dissociation from your life.
So you're saying that actually when we get into a position of habits, that we then take away the responsibility of being able to say yes or no to things or understand what the body actually needs.
Precisely.
But we're also being sold this idea that, we should take a supplement. Because as I've got older, I'm trying to protect my brain and all my brains and all everything. I'm drawn to kind of wanting to supplement, but I'm not very good I don't like taking things long term. And so I have an on and off. So I don't know if it's just actually me just saying, I switch on for a bit and then switch off for a bit, or my body saying, no, you don't need to have this for this amount of time. And so you kind of, I switch on and off.
Yeah. It's all of it. It's all of that. And
I was like, oh, okay then.
Yeah, it's all of that. And that is where it is. Like when I hear them coming, and it's so funny because as a practitioner, that was one way that I needed to mature. I found out because I needed to take myself out of it. Right. And just be neutral and observe where they are. And so where I'm looking at like compliance, I'm like, how are they just not complying? But then it evolved where it was like, you know what, actually, I started seeing the patterns. I started seeing, and I could reflect it once I started seeing it. But because it's like, even then at certain points of the cycle, you might feel like you're craving certain things, right? And so could it be that when you're satisfying that through what you're eating, whatever you were supplementing with, you didn't need it? You see what I mean? And then also,
sorry to cut you, Denicea. How do you just get to be aware or more in tune with your bodies? When your clients are drawn to you or want you to work with you, how do you invite them to kind of be more in tune with their bodies, given that there's so many external things happening in our lives?
Yeah. So one of the ways is, depending on what they're coming to me for, right? Depending on what they're looking for to address, it actually comes down to starting with a diary and I'll guide them into that. Like, so if they're coming and there's just anxiety about something, and so they're wanting to really work on, let's just say it is anxiety, but then also you see it reflected in their relationships. So like it's anxiety about going out or going to say something to someone in their family or something like that, right? Well, I might hear them start to talk about their sleep. And so then I would actually instruct them on what I would like for them to be aware of in their sleeping pattern. And it's more comprehensive than I just went to sleep and then I woke up. Like there's all these little things that are going on and that might change. And I want them to document that. And I feel like when they put it out on paper, or sometimes they're using the virtual tracker, but like when they put it on paper, in some ways it helps get them out of their head, number one. And then two, they could actually then begin to see the patterns for themselves. And so like knowing when was the last time that they ate, or they went to bed at this time, but they didn't go to sleep. Like it took a bit longer, or they get up after 2 to 3 hours, but someone's getting up after 3 or 4 hours. And then even if they got up, was it easy to go back to sleep, or did it take some time? Or is there a particular time that you're waking up? And then, are you going to the bathroom at night? How many times are you going to the bathroom? Actually, are you sweating? Because I tend to be with perimenopausal, going into postmenopause. So then it's like, are you sweating? If you're sweating, is it oily? Is it watery? Like, does it start or does it keep going even when you wake up? And so like, you see that I just probably spewed off maybe 20 things to document, to be aware of, but those are all signals. And in the way that those signals show up, I would then look at it and then I could be like, oh, you know what? All right, this looks like this is more related. Is there some fears? Are there some fears that's showing up? Or this one looks like it's more related into like structure. Like, are you feeling like you really want to try to structure things, but you can't? Or you are trying to, but the ability to be able to do that isn't happening? Or is it out of like, there's so much going on and you're burning out mentally? Or so the way that it all shows.
The questionnaire, the assessment part is inviting your clients, the women that come, to kind of be their own scientists, to step away from the.
And I call it a lab. Like, literally, I'm like, you're in a lab, you guys. Like, and stuff. And that's exactly it. Is you're in a lab and we are observing. And that's one of the other things is I try to encourage them from the beginning, because remember I said it's introverts that usually come in, right? Introverts are very great at overthinking and really great at swirling around in the head of like all the possibilities of things. So when you can get them to guiding them into specifically what to document, but then also encouraging them to see you're in a lab and we're just these mad scientists that are in a state of observation. We're not judging anything at all. We just want to see what comes up. And then we can go from there and then we can start asking other questions. And then we can see, what do we need to change, right, in your life? And then we're now in a state of observation. It's what I call the date yourself. That's my date yourself framework. And so the date yourself is literally for you to get to know yourself and continue. But every time that you're documenting is as if you're on a date. And then also it's discovery, it's the analysis, then it's the testing, and then it's the evolution.
Okay. Can I just ask you, because you said actually, your clients tend to be introverts. Do other personality types also attend? And what is it about the introvert personality type? Why are they why do they struggle in a particular way that maybe other personality types don't?
So the way I've seen it is because there's several things that could be happening. One could be that they're afraid of change. And then what does that mean, right? Like, so they might already feel like they struggle with relationships in general. And so then now they want to change, and then crap. What does this mean? Like, I'm going to lose more friends. I barely even have any. And then how am I supposed to make new friends? Right. Like, and so it's navigating all of that. And so that's a confidence thing, and that's a courage thing. Right. And then, so what happens is that they tend to start to repress what it is that they actually really want for themselves, and for the sake of maintaining status quo. But in that repression, that's why a lot of the ways that stuff pops up in Eastern medicine is because of repression, and this creating stagnation, and then it just kind of percolates, and like a lot of heat starts generating internally, and so, and based on their constitution, it could either weigh them down or it'll like come out in bursts, right? So like, I feel like just with the introverted archetype, like they can really overthink a lot of stuff, which may not lead to action. It may not lead to any changes. It is a trusting, like it's almost even sometimes they want to know what is actually going to happen because they're trying to prepare themselves. And so in a way, that's where I find myself, like, as that support person, is like, I'm there to listen and hear. Like, I know that there's something that you want for yourself that isn't happening. It's not expressing itself. And so for them, it's like, they just feel safe to be able to say it. And that's the thing, is sometimes people would be like, I don't know. They actually know. It's just whether or not they feel safe to say it or accept it.
Yes. It's interesting. I'm listening to you, and I'm also kind of thinking in terms of, what does it mean to change? And you're not really inviting them to take something your in the initial stages is to be an observant of your own body and your own mind and what's coming up. Whereas sometimes people want to be fixed by a professional. You're saying actually the resourcing is in with you. Do you trust yourself to be able to share it to me in that way?
And it's so funny that you said the resourcing, because I call it that. I call it the tools to resource. And like I'm breaking it up intentionally, coming to oneself and the spiritual source. It's within you. It's because I saw that, like, I don't want that responsibility. It is not my responsibility to take ownership of your own healing journey.
Why
that is yours.
Yeah. Why Eastern medicine? Why not kind of African traditions or South Americans or Native American traditions? What is it about the Eastern approach to looking at one's body or healing that resonates?
So I mean, I think it's just because of that's just what I was introduced to first. And since then, right, like that's when I started getting exposed to the other traditions. And like I grew up being told like we are Native American, like from my father's side. And so like my grandmother, I think it was like my great-great-grandfather was Black, and then my great-great-grandmother was white and Native. But like I don't know what tribe or anything like that, right? So like none of that stuff was passed down basically then, that meant. And so, but I've been told by other people, they're like, I'm like, you had to have been a shaman, like in a past life or something like that. Because there's such a, like, even beyond Eastern medicine, there's other things that I've just taken on. I've studied them or, it's just, that was my first introduction. And then I just allowed myself to start to see the other traditions. There aren't any that I like. Let's see here. The Dagara traditions is one that I really looked into and started studying some from that perspective. Some of it coming in from Native and Indigenous here perspective as well. Some shaman practices also. And what happened for me was like, man, all of y'all are kind of doing the same thing. And so, and it's just, once again, it's the glasses. It's like, through these lenses, this is what's happening here. And then I'm going to put those down and now I'm going to do this. But everyone was, guess what they're doing? They're all saying the same thing, which was to come to source, which was people are seeking to be whole. And that's the soul retrieval in shamanism. You're bringing pieces of your soul back. And that's ultimate. And what I'm doing, I realize, is like, I'm kind of like grounding it. Like, because I'm saying in the physical plane, like, here we go, let's do this. And in what way? So it's kind of like, you got to explore how you're disconnected so that you can actually see the connections and you come into that wholeness.
It is really interesting. I'm listening to you. I'm thinking about my brother who's in Brazil, going down the Amazon, going to be reconnected, and has gone on a journey of kind of finding himself in his 50s, working with shamans. I'm thinking of all the people I've recently had conversations where from different parts of the world saying the same thing. Whether they're Black, whether they're Indian, whether they're white, there is a sense of the people I'm talking to, or maybe who I'm drawn to, are saying that actually we need to do something different. We're so disconnected from ourselves that we need to do something to reconnect ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah. And so it's the subjective micro self, the individual, but you're seeing it also in the collective, where the collective has been so disconnected and separated. Some of it intentional by ways of this is how we're going to claim victory in a war, right? And all of that is by separation. But then you're seeing this cry for the collective to even come together in community. So then even now you're seeing this shift happening more locally and regionally, where people are wanting community. And then what's happening is that they're having to redefine what community means and what is it that you're seeking in community under this context, in this environment. Remember, these are people that, like I said, they were tied, they were linked, they were observing, they were into the environment. They were resourceful in the sense of using, but they were in such a relationship where it's like it's just moderation. We only need this much for this season. And then they nurtured it to regenerate, right? And so I think that's it. It's like it is this us coming to our own individual. And then through these different traditions, they're all connected because why? There's only one.
How do you help those who can't see or can't hear, who can't feel? Because we've got technology now. We've got the phone. I'm so grateful that we've got technology, because I would never have met you in any other way. But in some way, we're so connected to our technology that we don't know how to be with our bodies, or, spend time, or we're too scared. I often hear clients say that actually I'm too scared to be on my own.
Bingo. That's it. That is it. And actually, tell me if you saw this. That is what I saw when there was the global shutdowns. It wasn't so much that there was COVID going around. What I saw was, wow, people actually have not been taught or prepared to be with themselves, because all of the things that they used to distract themselves is gone. The access to it was gone. But then what happened was got innovative, right? And so then created more distractions to not be with oneself. And so then it's like this, I saw it before the pandemic as well, because I would get those too. Like I could sense the fear of actually getting to know what was going on for them. And it's true, it's valid. Like there is going to be this fear, the fear of what could really be there. The fear of even acceptance, like they're speaking with you and it's like, oh, like where could there have been another instance of being vulnerable with someone and the response from that other person was not what they actually anticipated, right? And so then they're still guarding themselves and they're protecting themselves. And it's like, I just feel like that's the thing, is that we're here to navigate it. And I love using the body, because what happens is that it takes me out of it, but it also takes them out of it. It takes their mental side out of it. It takes their ego out of it, to be able to go and say, hey, you know what? This is what's showing up digestively. Like you're telling me, this is your pooping pattern, right? This is what you're feeling. If it's this bloating that's happening, is this nausea that's happening, whatever. You're telling me this, and then I'm just going to sit here and link it together to show you how this is a manifestation, like this is a physical presentation of how you're navigating in your life and what's happening in your life. You're responding to your environment. And so in some ways, to reframe, like I said, that relationship with the self, where they begin to see that it contains wisdom and insight. It's not working against them, right? But it contains the wisdom and insight, because then what happens is for them to be able to start to see the patterns of what's playing out in their life, right? Then as they navigate, so as they continue in life, and that's why I don't believe in like overcoming doubt, overcoming fear and worry, overcoming any of that, or stress management. Like it's not even that. Because the thing is when the doubt, the worry, the fear show up, there's a reason. So I'm of the camp of we're going to invite that to the table. And then now tie in tell me, like, let me see you through the lens of what's popping up in your body. And sometimes I am using intuition as well. So it's like I'm scanning intuitively, like, and I'm seeing what's also happening. They're reporting subjectively also what's happening, and then to connect it, and then being able to reflect it and just say, this is kind of like what's happening. How are you navigating? What is going on in your life? And then that, from that point is when they could begin to shift it. So sometimes, yes, it is food. Sometimes it is herbs. Sometimes it is supplements. Sometimes it is labs. But it's also even the becoming aware of what their desire is and why it's not showing up in their head.
I was wondering, there's almost like a sense of an awareness of self. How do we invite our clients ourselves to be aware of ourselves and not to judge it or not to kind of be judgmental about what we see, just as data in some ways.
Exactly. And with that, I do want to say, this is why too, I say, please, 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 please be aware of when you're saying or you're connecting with other people that say this whole notion of your best self. That is an automatic judgment. You're implying that your being before that wasn't the best. Like it wasn't good. It wasn't good enough. Yet paradoxically, everyone's like, you're kind of going around saying, I am enough. But then you're trying to get to your best self. And it's like, well, you're kind of you're creating a hierarchy. You're creating this scale of good and bad. What if it's just yourself? That's all I want. That's all I see for you, is for you to be an authentic expression of yourself and to do that in every area of your life.
So to be an authentic person is not to be judgmental, not to believe that there were better parts of you, to accept that actually all parts are equal and we are the part. Is that what you're kind of implying? Yeah. Yeah. We are the part. So then, that actually knocks away all the self-improvement industry.
It does. But that's how they get. But think about it. If people continuously believe and start looking for, I'm not my best self. I'm not my best self. I'm not my best self. They're going to keep looking for stuff, right? And someone's telling you you're not your best self. And it's like, really? It's all of yourself. That is holism.
Holism is to say, okay, we have brought ourselves today, and you see me and I see you. I bring my whole self, and neither of those things are good or bad or indifferent. They're just me and you're just you.
Precisely. And then what happens is I end up being in that role, facilitating how they navigate this perspective now of themselves.
So I'm going to ask, because once we're there, like I'm with you, I suppose is, how do you invite, they've done the assessment or they're bringing back the data to you. And often people want to be fixed. That's why they come. And in some ways you're saying, okay, there may be some things that we need to look at, but you yourself don't need to be fixed. This is, this might be nutrients, this might be routine or structure. Is that enough for your clients? Can they embrace that? Or do you have people who are slightly resistant and want a quick answer?
Oh, they're resistant and they want, like, they think about it. Like, they hear, like, oh, you do Eastern medicine. So they automatically want this full-on assessment of, okay, just tell me the herbs. And the thing is I also I employ a being with you to see where you're at, and then also to apply, like, what I see and vision wise and future. And so if I can
being with you to see where you're at,
and then I'm still seeing future, so I can see what is the potential that could occur. So simultaneously, I'm showing them this physical manifestation, but then also showing them how it's showing up in the spiritual side, but then also how it's showing up in their relationships. And so then do they resist? Yes. Do they get upset? Sometimes? Yeah. Because I'm telling them like, yeah, I can supplement. I'm going to give you some supplements. Sure. But do you want sustainability? And so you can't out supplement your disgust at being in a relationship with someone.
The bit that I've connected to, just in terms of what you just said, is also connected to some training I recently had, was this whole idea of bringing the spirituality back into our lives. Because in some ways that's lost, AA kind of recognised a higher power in some ways. It's not for everyone. Here in probably England, we're not as religiously inclined, probably in the UK as America. So I suppose, how do you kind of invite those people who've disconnected from their spiritual self? Not the self that goes to church, but the self or goes to the mosque or, but just connects within a higher power than themselves.
Yeah. If they came across me either through word of mouth or on socials or on podcast guesting, they already have self-selected in the sense of, at least at a minimum, I feel this inkling, but I'm not sure what it is. Or they already have had experiences of like intuition happening, like, and then they disregarded it, but then something else happened, or they might have actually listened and then something had happened, right? And then so what happens is they're in that state of confusion of what is this, and then before they might have been very, very rational, very logical, but that happens because we're spiritual beings, and so then those things would happen, and then all of a sudden it's got them like, what's going on? How do I? So by the time they really come closer into my perfect playground, literally that's the space I call it, the perfect playground, is that they would have already self-selected. That means that they're already open and they're curious. They just might need direction into how to incorporate it. So how is it that I might intuit this information, but then how do I apply it? Right. And it happens for me all the time. So like, I'm even speaking from my own growth and experience as well, is like, I might get an intuitive impression, but we're sovereign beings and we have willpower, and it's whether or not I'm going to like do it. Right. And so then it becomes like, do I follow that? Like, that just seems so random. Like, why would I go and do that? Right. And so sometimes that's what it is that they're coming then to me to where I'm encouraging them to actually, I'm reflecting too, like, right. Okay. So you got that impression. What is it telling you? And then why are you resisting it? And so they're already overthinkers, like I said. So like, they're going to try to rationalize it and then try to make it make sense. And then also like, but then it's this place of what if you just kind of did it? And then what would happen? And so then you kind of like, they kind of go, as they start to realize like, okay, I can do this, and they do it. Sometimes they're not, and sometimes they are. Like, that's the whole part of it. But then they start to get stronger at it. Like the impression they might get stronger. For some people, the way that the information comes to them comes in different forms, in different ways. And so even then, in their curiosity, as they're researching their own YouTube or whatever, they might come across someone, and once again, here comes this judgment that like, this person sees things in this way, but they don't. They see it and they might feel it. So this is why I like working with empaths also. So then they're going to feel it, but they might have judged it. They might have judged it and been like, well, I'm not that great at intuiting, or they're thinking that whatever they're feeling on a somatic level is theirs when it's actually someone else's. So it's even that is boundaries. Like for me, that's an example of boundary example is like what's considered actually yours that you're feeling, and then what's that of someone else's that you're feeling, and then how do you navigate that?
What do you see with empaths then and caregivers? What is it about their experience, their lived experience, that probably needs more care and attention from yourself or for their selves, you know?
It's because there's a tendency that we overdo it. We care that much, right, for someone else that we may overdo it, and then we're burning ourselves out. This is that example I was saying earlier. Is like we might push, right? So we'll take control. We want to take control because we're pushing what we see as potential in someone else. And then there might be, sometimes it's like underlying guilt, right? About certain things with people. It might even be resentment that shows up. And so like to navigate this, what happens is sometimes you'll see those that are empaths that will all of a sudden just be like, I don't want to care. This happened just recently, actually, with someone I was speaking with. She's like, I'm done, but I don't even want to be because I just care so much. And I'm like, bingo, you just talked yourself into what I'm talking about. Is you cannot shut that down because it is your gift. That ability to feel in this way, to have an understanding and a compassionate understanding of what's going on for someone else is not given to everyone. So what it is we just need to know how to navigate it so that we're doing it sustainably, so that we're doing it where and this is why your relationship with yourself will support you. Because as you know the patterns for yourself and the rhythms for yourself, when you're picking up and tuning in on someone else's, you can immediately be like, that is not mine. This is just information. Got it. And then it's gone. And so and I have an example of us happening for myself is that so as I'm going through and I'm evolving, a lot of it is getting stronger. So my mom and my sister and I, we were out somewhere, and it was this thing at this restaurant. It was this big thing. It was this show going on, it was a dinner and all this stuff in this place. Really cool space. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I feel like I'm in the Caribbean, whatever. And they had all these dancers, and all of a sudden I'm struck with massive headache, and to the point I'm squinting because it was so irritating. And I'm like, I don't get migraines. What is going on? And I'm just sitting there and I'm doing breathing exercises, feet flat on the ground, doing some grounding exercises. And then I'm like, this isn't mine. I know it's not. It was so intense and felt like forever, but it really wasn't. And then my sister had turned around. Some lady had got her attention at the table next to us. And then my sister, after talking with her, turns around to me and my mom and says, she says, this lady asked us to keep an eye out on her because she's here by herself, but she is epileptic. And she was already starting to feel that potentially something was going to happen. So I'm literally a table away from this lady, and I'm totally picking up on this and didn't even realize it, right? I didn't know where it was coming from. Let me put it like that. And so as soon as my sister said that, and I'm like, oh, that's worse. It's gone. It went away. The feeling went away.
I'm listening to you, and I reconnect with that story. I connect with the fact that as human beings, we can pick and sense other people's stuff, a bypass, I often am able to read my daughter go to the shops and buy what she wants without even having a conversation. And I've had that with siblings. But I think there's also something about the women in my family, my mom's family, are seers.
I feel.
And so therefore it's not unusual for me to know that there is something greater or connecting with someone else, that empathic connection. that can kind of jump over to someone else. And even when we're sitting together, isn't it, and they've done research where hormones, we secrete oxytocin and they kind of like leach out, yes, with us.
And then you start, and sometimes what happens with heart? They start to beat at the same. That's resonance. It's resonance. So even then, it's like when we're in these relationships with other people, we are also seeing where it is that we're resonating. Where are we resonating, and to whom and to what are we resonating? And then that's when that's where it is that we can start to explore and see what's happening. And then we can start to shift it. If it is something that we're seeing is not exactly like, it's not really going in the direction that you're seeing for yourself according to your desires, right? And so then it's like, ooh, interesting. Like, what is this? What am I picking up on here? And
but that requires, Denicea, I wonder if it requires people to be less cognitive. I can imagine downside from an outsider, if you're rational and quite cognitively based, it sounds like, this sounds a bit wild. What is these two women talking about? It doesn't sound like, and yet it's possible. Other parts of the world I'm sure that you have a deeper connection and deeper understanding than myself. So how do we invite people who are maybe more rationally inclined and maybe more in their heads and not in their bodies? How do we get them to join both their body and their head?
I feel like I just think that there's going to be a sense of readiness for them. Like it's almost like they get to a certain point that they realize like there is no rational to this. So if there is no rational to this, there's got to be something else. And so then they'll get curious. And now sometimes are they resistant? Yeah. And then are they going to sit there and question you? Yeah. Now, granted, those aren't my type of people that would come into the playground, right? But I'm just saying, like, they are out there. And so they're, in some ways, then they start to go out challenging other people and questioning it all. Like, and that's where I say, you know what? It is physics. There you can go and see studies done by people because they keep trying to question it. They're like, well, we know that this happens, but how? And I think that's the thing, is that people just want to know. They want to get into the how. And sometimes I'm like, sure, let's go ahead and like let's go and explore that. Let's expend some energy there. And then other times I'm like, just know that this is what it is. And then now expend some energy into what it is that you're actually desiring, and how can we create the environment for it to happen. And so it's all an energy allocation, and you can make that choice, right?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think often in society, we probably need agitators. We probably need those people that question everything, that don't believe in stuff, believe in their rational mind. Because actually, in some ways, they're really good scientists, aren't they? Because they're actually kind of, there to kind of to become their own scientists. We're inviting them to be their own scientists to their minds and apply rational thoughts, if that's what they want, to their ideas. But feelings and somatic understanding happens right beyond that, doesn't it? Beyond the known self. There is so much we don't know, and there's so much we won't even know that we don't know.
Yeah, and the thing is too is that I'm not even asking you to deny that part of you. I'm actually asking you to use that, but then also to open up and welcome in the other aspects. Because why? You're a whole being. So even though you might cognitively try to deny the spirit part, I'm gonna tell you it's there. So, it's like I said, I see you as a whole person. So I want you to bring in that mental part of you, and at the same time see that there is the spirit side, there is this mental side, there's this emotional side, there's the physical, right? And you're just trying to bring them all together. And then we're looking at how you're navigating in your life for a way to just see, like, how is that you're navigating and how congruent is that to what you're desiring. And that's it. Like,
Denicea, I could talk to you all day, all night, and all evening. I'm really mindful that you've probably got somewhere else to go. I just want to thank you so much for agreeing to be on Being Curious with Counselling Reflections. I have certainly been curious today and found talking with you really interesting. Some of it aligns with my own values. Some of it, I'm just going to have to kind of just let it land and let it just cogitate and just, sit. How can people find you in this wonderful world of ours? Where are you? So if people want to work with you, do you do online or is it mainly in person?
So it's all online right now. Maybe I got some in-person retreats coming down the line, maybe, but it's all online, and it's at theperfectplayground.com. So like, literally that's my space. When you go to theperfectplayground.com, there's like, I am building out an adventure center. So it's like filled with like tools based on these themes of how can you navigate in life so you can experience these rich relationships, and then in what ways that you can use these different lenses that are coming from the signals of your whole body. But even at the adventure park, there is this welcome center. And so I'm building out like a whole guide of how you can even get started with here are some things that you can just get started with for free right now. And then you're totally welcome to come into the rest of the adventure park where I'm going to be building out some stuff there. But it's at theperfectplayground.com. And you'll see some stuff that's there. And then you can sign up, get some emails that are I say, come get witty with me. So it's wisdom, insight, tips, and tools on navigating life by being your perfect, authentic self. And so
this is so beautiful, and you're just a wonderful, beautiful spirit. So I absolutely really have enjoyed having this conversation with you, being curious with you this evening or this afternoon, depending on what part of the world you are at. So thank you very much. I deeply appreciate your expertise and talent. So thank you.
Thank you.